seated.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to ask you a few questions about Bill and Maureen's marriage during the couple of years before Maureen died.
Sure.
So you have known Maureen and Bill since they first met.
Correct.
And you witnessed the entirety of their relationship.
Correct.
And you had guessed that the marriage seemed to be falling apart for about 2 years before Maureen died. Is that correct?
Correct.
And when you say for 2 years, Maureen was unhappy for those 2 years.
Correct.
Bill was also unhappy for those 2 years.
Correct.
And they had both discussed divorce before the spring of 2019.
Yes.
And sometimes Maureen was hoping to get divorced,
Yes.
and other times Bill was hoping to get divorced.
Yes.
During the 15 or so years that they were together, you never saw any physical violence happening between Bill and Maureen?
No.
Maureen never told you she felt unsafe?
Objection. Hearsay.
I'll rephrase.
Okay.
You never observed Maureen with unexplained bruises or injuries?
No.
And you never had any specific safety concerns when it came to Maureen and Bill?
No.
You mentioned Bill discussing a job opportunity down south. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, he was hoping to move down south for work,
Correct.
but Maureen didn't want to move.
Correct.
After the divorce, moving down south would become an option for Bill,
Sure.
presumably?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk with you a little bit about the intervention you mentioned.
Okay.
Were you involved in planning the intervention, or were you just present at the intervention?
A small amount of planning.
Small amount of planning? Okay. And that intervention was partially because of Bill's gambling.
Correct.
There were also concerns about Bill's mental health.
Correct.
Okay. There were concerns about suicidality.
Yes, just not being in the right frame of mind.
Okay. About Bill not being in the right frame of mind.
Correct.
Okay. And after the intervention, your concern about Bill's mental health grew more pronounced. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you would check in with Maureen about Bill's mental health?
Yes, I would.
Okay. There was not a professional interventionist at the intervention, was there?
No, there was not.
There was no psychologist present in the room?
No, there was not.
No one was facilitating that conversation?
Correct.
And you spoke with Bill in the spring of 2019 about his marriage.
Yes.
You spoke with Bill about Maureen planning to leave.
Yes.
Is that right? And you described his reaction as running the gamut.
Yes.
That sometimes he was upset, sometimes he was very emotional.
Correct.
Other times, he admitted he wanted the divorce. Is that
Correct.
right? And you spoke with Maureen about her plans,
Yes, I did.
about her plan to move into Brenda's house.
Yes.
She was going to be moving there temporarily.
Yes.
And is that because she couldn't afford rent or down payment immediately?
That, and she also wanted the kids to stay in the close to their school.
Okay. If for whatever reason she was unable to move to Brenda's house, was there a plan B in place?
There, to my knowledge, no, there was no plan B.
Okay. And you were included on that email where Maureen is asking for help.
Yes, I was.
She stated she was overwhelmed with everything. Is that right?
Yes.
She needed help packing.
Correct.
She needed a place to live.
Correct.
She needed help moving.
Correct.
She needed help getting the house ready to be put on the market.
Correct.
You mentioned that at that time, Maureen sounded hopeful.
Yes.
That it was the first time in a while you had heard her sound hopeful.
Correct.
She had been unhappy for some time before that.
Yes.
You mentioned a message from Maureen where she promised she wouldn't call you for 7 days.
Yes.
She felt like she would be a bother if she called.
Yes, that was her general demeanor. She never wanted to be a bother to anyone.
She never wanted to be a bother. She didn't want to burden you with her problems.
Correct.
If I could have one moment, please. When you spoke with Maureen in the spring of 2019, she told you she was planning on leaving the marriage. You told her you were proud of her.
Yes.
You were happy for her that she was leaving.
I was happy for her to finally be at peace with the decision.
She seemed finally at peace.
Yes.
And this was not the first time you and Maureen had talked about the marriage, right?
Correct.
Maureen had seemed unhappy in the marriage, you were guessing, for a couple of years.
Correct.
And you didn't think the marriage was very healthy
I did not.
for either of them.
Correct.
And you would encourage Maureen to consider leaving,
Yes,
but Maureen was never ready to leave,
that is right.
not until spring of 2019. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
So that email that defense counsel was asking you about, Maureen said she was sort of overwhelmed, right?
I don't remember the exact wording.
Would you like to see it?
Sure.
And the first line she says, "Hi, I am sort of overwhelmed with everything," correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Also, you testified on cross-examination that you were never concerned for Maureen's safety, correct?
The question was a specific, I think it was a specific concern about her safety. So, I interpreted that as I wasn't ever concerned, like an imminent danger or like a specific thing happening to her.
Okay, well, again, you remember speaking with investigators in this case, right?
I do.
And do you remember telling investigators that after a specific incident involving your brother, without getting into specifics, that you were concerned with Maureen's safety?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else? Just one moment, please. And Ms. Hobbs, you and Morin had a conversation about making sure that the defendant did not have access to guns, right?
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Maureen was a very private person.
Very.
She was very quiet.
Yes.
She didn't like to.
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond the scope of redirect.
This goes to her characterization of how overwhelmed she was when she emails asking for help.
Your Honor, the question was, in her email, did she say she was overwhelmed? I clarified specifically what the email said. There's no more questioning about it.
I agree with the state. It was specifically about what the email said. If there's some other line of questioning relative to that email, I'm happy to allow it.
Fair to say Maureen tended to minimize her distress.
Objection, Your Honor. It's beyond the scope.
Again, I think it's beyond the scope as it relates to that issue.
You mentioned checking with Maureen to ensure that Bill did not have access to firearms. Is that correct?
That is correct.
At that time, you were continuing to be worried about Bill's mental health.
Correct.
You were worried that Bill was possibly suicidal.
Correct.
You discussed having a sort of general safety concern. Is that correct?
For
Maureen.
yes.
Did you share that safety concern with Maureen?
Yes.
Did she agree that she was unsafe?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
No, I'll allow it. Goes to a state of mind.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Did Maureen agree that she was unsafe?
By unsafe, do you mean anyway?
Did Maureen feel as though she was in physical danger?
No, I asked her that specifically.
And she said no, she felt safe.
She did say she felt safe.
Thank you.
Anything further from the state?
Nothing further,
Okay.
Your Honor.
And may this witness be excused by both sides?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, ma'am, you can step down, you can stay or leave as you choose. Thank you.
State calls Sarah Hennessey.
If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide this court and jury shall be the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? I do. Thank you. Please be seated. And once you're close enough to that microphone, if you could give us your full name and spell your last name for our court reporter.
Good afternoon, I'm Sarah. S-A-R-A, Hennessey, Hennessey.
And Ms. Hennessey, I'll remind you that because we're all wearing masks, our voice doesn't project quite the same way, so if you could just keep your voice up a little bit more than you'd normally.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Back in 2019, where did you work?
The New Hampshire State Police.
The major crime unit?
Yes,
Beginning in April of 2019, did you participate in the investigation into the death of Maureen Argie in Londonderry?
I did.
What were some of the investigative steps that you recall that you took as part of that investigation?
I interviewed witnesses and so forth.
That also as part of that investigation, on April 5th, did you obtain from Matthew Thornton Elementary School bus surveillance footage for the bus taken the previous day by the Argie children?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention specifically to June 7th of 2019. On that day, did you meet with Brenda Quinn, the defendant's mother?
I did.
And where did you meet Ms. Quinn?
Here in this courthouse.
And for what purpose did you meet with Ms. Quinn in this courthouse?
I met Ms. Quinn to execute a search warrant on her cell phone.
And a search warrant, is that basically judicial authorization to search a place or a thing?
Yes,
And was the search warrant for Ms. Quinn's cell phone for any data in particular
yes, it was for messages and pictures.
between her and who in particular?
William Argie.
When you met with Ms. Quinn at this courthouse on June 7th of 2019, did she have her cell phone with her?
She did.
And I want to show you State's Exhibit 42. It's a numbers chart that the jurors have seen several times previously. It may be hard for you to read it. On the bottom, it has a number associated with Brenda Quinn, 603-762-0602. Was that the cell phone number associated with the phone that Brenda Quinn had with her back in June of 2019?
Yes,
When you met with Ms. Quinn on that day, did you actually obtain data from her cell phone?
I did.
And more specifically, did you obtain text messages between her and her son, the defendant William Argie?
Yes.
And how did you document the recovery of text messages from Brenda Quinn's cell phone?
I took pictures with my state-issued cell phone. So I took pictures with the phone was out in front of me. I pulled up the text messages and I photographed them.
So State's Exhibit 45. The pictures in State's Exhibit 45, do they appear to be the pictures that you took with your state-issued cell phone on June 7th when you executed that search warrant on Ms. Quinn's cell phone?
They are.
And I know that these are hard to see, and we'll have some larger photographs momentarily, but are these the actual photographs that you took as part of that search warrant execution process?
Yes.
And if we can take a closer look at the photograph on the far left here. That's right here. The photo on the far left is what's enlarged on the screen.
Yes, sorry.
So, right here.
Yes,
Same?
yes.
From your own experience in using cell phones, do you know what the balloons in green and in gray represent?
Yes, it's two parties that are exchanging text messages.
Does this photograph, and you also have it in front of you if it's hard to read, does it show 3 separate text communications on Tuesday, April 22nd?
It does.
And the times for those 3 separate text message communications on April 2nd, are they circled on the right photograph here?
Yes,
And for each conversation, is it just one text message back and forth?
so the top one is a message, a reply, and then a picture.
Yes. And then the middle one is 3, and the last one is 2.
Correct. Or an emoji.
So the next slide, on the left we have State's Exhibit 43. And these are portions of the cell phone records belonging to the defendant's cell phone. And do you see entries here highlighted in yellow, green, and blue that have a corresponding other telephone number belonging to a Brenda Quinn?
Yes.
And with respect to the start times of these communications, how do they correlate on this chart to the left, the actual photographs of text messages that you took on the right?
They match, the times match the series of messages that are
So
sent.
the one highlighted in yellow, we have a start time of 9:43, and right here it's 9:43.
AM, yes.
And again, we have 3 messages, and we have 2 messages in this emoji.
Correct.
And then for green, we have a start time of 12:30, and that correlates to 12:30 here.
12:30 PM, yes.
And again, we have 3 messages, 3 messages.
Correct.
And with respect to the bottom in blue, we have 2 starting at 5:50, and does that correlate to 5:50 as well?
It does,
And
PM.
2 text messages?
Yes.
So going back to the series of smaller photographs, I want to now focus on the second one. And is this photograph that I just showed, is that an enlargement of this second photograph?
Yes.
And what do we have for a start time with respect to this?
It's April 3rd, 10:35 AM.
And does this photo and the rest of the photos that we saw, the smaller photos, all a text message conversation on April 3rd between Ms. Quinn using on her cell phone and her son, William Argie?
Yes.
Going back to that cell phone communication chart that the jurors are familiar with, we have for the cell phone corresponding to William Argie on April 3rd, a series of text messages between his cell phone and the cell phone belonging to Brenda Quinn starting at 10:35 a.m. How does that correspond to the start time for the text messages you took photos of?
It matches the time.
Whose cell phone initiates the text messages beginning on April 3rd at about 10:35 a.m.?
William Argie.
And at this point in time, I want to read those text messages. So you have it in front of you, so it's easier for you to read. What I'll do is I'm going to read in gray, and if you can then read in green.
Sure.
Okay, so let me know when you're ready to begin.
You're going to start on April 3rd?
I am,
Okay.
at 10:35.
Okay.
Mom, what I'm trying to say is, yes, you opened your arms and home to your daughter and her child when her life was crumbling in time of need. And now you're uprooting your life and opening your home to a non-child and my kids. That option was never even offered to me. So yes, this hurts. Sorry if this is upsetting to you. I do think I have a right to feel hurt, embarrassed, maybe a little angry. How am I not in some way to feel this?
And then from Ms. Quinn, I understand. I could have offered you the same option, but I was not able to see how you could have managed raising the children. Your life was/is unstable, and maybe I was wrong, but I just did not see how you could do it. I don't think I need to tell you, or excuse me, I don't think I need to tell or remind you of all the past events. I am not even sure if a court would even allow it right now if the two of you ever get into a battle over it. I have not offered to parent my grandchildren. That is your responsibility and Mo's. If you think you can and want to be the custodial parent, talk to Mo about it. She might be agreeable. I only want to help where I can, and it is not my intention to anger anyone.
So if she's agreeable to me being custodial parent, I can live in the house with them while trying to find work and parent my children? Because not just my life is unstable, everyone is. But not to say that I don't understand what you meant. But isn't that what the unit is all about, being close. I would be close to loved ones and my kids and support system, not feeling sorry about myself and not being able to see my kids on my timeline because I live 2 hours away really doesn't help much. Units support each other when needed because Karen would still be there, my sister, who I'm sure is going to need support with Gracie, as you and Larry will be in Maine. Maybe I'm thinking wrong.
From Ms. Quinn, not doing this, find something to focus on today. I'm not bantering with you.
No problem, understood.
Well, I don't understand much of this message and I'm at work. Could you discuss this with me later?
No, I'm done. I get the message.
Billy, do something productive today. I love you.
And is that the conclusion of the text messages that you obtained from Ms. Quinn's cell phone pursuant to that search warrant on June of 2019?
It is.
One moment. I have no further questions. Thank you.
No questions.
Okay, and may this witness be excused by both sides?
Yes.
Ma'am, you can step down, you can stay or leave as you choose. Thank you.
Thank you.
The state calls Ann Gaudet to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide this court and jury shall be the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. And as you know, once you're close to that microphone, if you could state your full name for our court reporter and spell your first and last name. Thank you.
Ann Gaudet, A-N-N-E-G-A-U-D-E-T.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gaudet.
Good afternoon.
Did you know Maureen Argie?
Yes,
How?
I'm her mother.
Do you recognize the person in this picture?
Yes, it's Maureen.
When was Maureen's birthday?
October 26th, 1977.
Was Maureen your only child?
No, she was my firstborn.
Who are your other children?
I have a son, Matthew.
Can you describe your relationship with Maureen?
My relationship, well, when she was born as an infant and a child, I guess my role as a mother was to watch her, nurture her, protect her, watch her grow. When she became a teenager, frankly, she drove me crazy and I drove her crazy. And then I watched her become an adult. She had a career. I watched her become a wife and a mother. And the relationship, I think, changed then to adult, based on mutual respect and love.
How would you describe Maureen?
Maureen was a strong person. She had, I think, an inner strength to her. She was resilient. She was quiet and shy to the extent that she didn't like a lot of attention drawn to herself. She held strong convictions for things in, say, in religion or politics, but she felt that everyone was entitled to their own opinion and that every person should listen to opposing opinions in order to better clarify their own beliefs and explain them to other people. She was organized. She was compassionate and caring to family and friends and all those strangers. And she was a very proud and loving mother to her two children.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
showing you State's Exhibit 10. Do you recognize the CD?
I do.
And how do you recognize this?
Those are my initials with the date.
Did you have an opportunity to listen to a small portion of this call prior to today?
I did.
And did you recognize the calling party to the Londonderry Police Department?
I did.
And who was that?
Maureen.
So you mentioned a little bit about Maureen as a mother.
Mhm.
And so tell us, who are Maureen's children?
Ella and Gavin.
What was Maureen's relationship like with her children?
She was loving, attentive. She was a great mother. She spent a lot of time with them. She was very proud of them.
Did she care and provide for her children?
Yes, she did.
From what you saw of Maureen's interactions with her children and discussions that you had with her in the weeks before she died, did she have any intention of leaving her children?
Never.
What about relinquishing primary custody of them to the defendant?
No.
In her adulthood, did Maureen have any long-term health or medical issues?
She did not, that I know of.
In her adult life, was Maureen ever hospitalized for illness or medical condition other than childbirth?
No.
And based on your many interactions and conversations with Maureen, did she ever appear suicidal?
No.
Was Maureen employed?
Yes.
Where?
Elder Care Services in Merrimack Valley.
And what type of work did she do?
She was a social worker or a case manager at 2 housing sites.
Was Maureen married?
Yes.
Who was she married to?
William Argie.
Do you see William Argie in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you please identify him and describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
He's sitting at the end of the defense table with a purple tie.
Your Honor, would the record please reflect the witness has identified the defendant?
It will.
Thank you. So directing your attention to late March 2019, what was the status of Maureen's marriage to the defendant?
It wasn't in a good place, and they had discussed splitting up and getting a divorce, moving on.
Did you and your family support Maureen with her decision?
Yes.
What were the living arrangements for Maureen, the defendant, and their kids at this time at the end of March 2019?
They were all living together in Londonderry.
So the week before Maureen's death, the last week of March 2019,
Yes.
did the defendant FaceTime you during that time?
The week before she died, yes.
First of all, could you just generally explain what FaceTime is?
Well, yeah, I'm not really technologically inclined
Just
either, but
generally.
using the iPad and you make the phone call, but you see that person and they see you
Okay.
on the screen.
And did you ever FaceTime with the defendant prior to him FaceTiming you at the end of March 2019?
Not to my recollection, no.
Do you recall what the defendant said during that FaceTime call?
In general terms, yes.
And what did he say?
He asked, my husband and I were there, he asked if we had a few minutes, he wanted to talk to us. He said that he would like to talk to us because we had always been good to him, that he loved my daughter. He said, I love your daughter. I know I wasn't the best husband financially, and I'm sorry, it was never my intention to hurt anyone. And that was basically in general terms.
Now, you said that your husband was with you during that conversation?
Yes,
What is your husband's name?
Joseph Gaudet.
Is your husband Joseph Gaudet Maureen's father?
Yes,
I'm showing you State's Exhibit 42, which is a phone numbers chart. Does this number here listed for Joseph Gaudet, 781-964-3376, was that his phone number in the spring of 2019?
yes.
Okay, so now turning to Saturday, March 30th. Do you remember seeing Maureen on that date?
Yes.
And what were you doing on that day?
We met Maureen and Methuen with Ella and Gavin, and we took Ella and Gavin to bring them back to our house to stay overnight. and Maureen returned to New Hampshire.
And so you said the kids stayed overnight?
Yes.
And how did the kids return home to Londonderry?
Initially, we were going to meet my daughter again in Methuen. That was our halfway point. She contacted me and asked me if we could instead drive up to the house in Londonderry, so my husband could look around the house. They were in the process of trying to declutter and fix things that could be fixed in order to put it on the market to sell it, and she wanted to do a walkthrough with my husband in order to see what kind of things that he would be able and willing to do to help fix up the house.
Okay, and so when you brought the kids back home, that was on Sunday, March 31st then?
Yes. Mhm.
Do you recall who was home during that time at 118 West Road?
Maureen, Billy, and of course we brought the kids with us.
After you were at her home on March 30th, 2019, do you remember seeing Maureen again before she died?
No, and it wasn't Saturday the 30th, but Sunday the 31st we were there.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for correcting
No.
me. So the last time you saw her
Was that Sunday?
Saturday, March 31st.
Yes, and I
Thank
didn't
you.
see her after that.
Okay. Do you remember emailing with her after seeing her on the 31st?
There were emails and text messages, but I can't tell you which was which on which day.
Okay. And so during that week of April 1st, I'm going to direct your attention to that. Do you remember emailing and texting or emailing Maureen to talk about plans for that upcoming Saturday, April 6th?
Yes, she was again looking for someone to watch the kids, so we were back and forth about plans.
And what was Maureen planning to do while you were watching the kids, if you remember?
I suppose pack, get things ready. One of her friends had offered room in her home to store boxes or things that they would need, even after they moved, both her and Billy would need. But they didn't want the house to look cluttered, so they were trying to move out things that they wanted to hang on to but couldn't keep in the house. And they were going to pack up and drive those things to her friends.
And do you remember where Maureen was planning to live after she moved out of the house?
Yes, with Brenda Quinn, Billy's mother.
Was moving in with Brenda Quinn Maureen's long-term plan in terms of housing?
No, she said that Brenda had offered it to her, and she thought it was a good short-term solution while she could save some money so that she could put a down payment, in something, an apartment or a condo or something in the future, as well as the fact that she really wanted her kids to be able to stay in the school they were at. She was trying to minimize any kind of upset this was going to cause to them.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears for a little bit. And I'm showing you States Exhibit 58. Would you like the actual copy in front of you to see it a little easier?
No, I think I can get it.
Okay. All right. So do you recognize these emails?
There's one that says, lost my phone, call Billy in 15 minutes if I don't find it.
Yes.
And then the other one, found it, sorry.
Yes. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Okay. And now I'm just going to ask you a couple questions about this. So this email, States Exhibit 58, is dated April 3rd, 2019, correct?
Yes.
And so we're going to start right here with the bottom email. So April 3rd, 2019 at 8:32 p.m. Maureen Argie at yahoo.com. Are you familiar with that being an email address for Maureen?
Yes.
So at that time, you received an email from Maureen's account that said, lost my phone, call Billy 603-845-7815 in 15 minutes if I don't find. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And then at 9:01 p.m., an email was sent from Maureen's email address that said, I found it, sorry. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this was sent to Ann Gaudet, and is that yourself?
Yes.
Joe Gaudet, your husband?
Yes.
And Matt Gaudet, your son?
Yes.
And now, when this email refers to Billy. Who do you understand that to be?
Billy Argie.
Okay. Did you talk to her, to Maureen, at all that night after these emails were sent?
No.
Did you talk to her at all the following day, Thursday, April 4th?
No.
If I may just have a moment. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to ask you a little bit about your relationship with Maureen as an adult.
As a what?
As an adult.
Mm-hmm.
You lived fairly close to Maureen, just one state over?
Yes, we lived in Massachusetts, yes.
Okay. And so you saw her and Bill regularly?
Regularly, but again, it depends on what was going on as the children got older into sports, birthday parties, things like that. But, yes, we kept up communication, yes. And if we didn't see each other, it would be through email or text or phone call.
Okay. And Maureen would confide in you, is that right?
Occasionally, but again, she was very private, so not always.
Okay. She would talk to you about problems she might be having at home?
Yes, toward the end, yes.
Toward the end, okay. So she told you in the spring of 2019 that she was planning to leave Bill.
Yes.
Was that a surprise to you when she said that?
No.
Why not?
Because they had difficulties earlier than that, and they had tried counseling, so we knew that things were, rocky
Okay.
along the way, so it wasn't a complete surprise, no.
Okay. Was there ever a time when Maureen stopped confiding in you and her dad?
No, I would say her whole life has been the same way. She was very private, so
Okay.
when she felt comfortable enough to share things, she would.
Okay. Did you or Maureen's father ever encourage her to leave Bill?
When she was really down in the dumps, yes, and she was stressed about everything. It seemed like they were both so unhappy that it would be easier on everyone, and they'd both be happier if they could part.
Okay. And when do you think that was, that they both seemed so unhappy you thought that the marriage should end?
I'm going to say it goes back a few years prior to the day that she was killed.
And did you and Maureen's father get along well with Bill?
Yes, he actually was very respectful to us all the time in our interactions, yes.
Okay. You mentioned going over to the Londonderry house
Mm-hmm.
on, I believe it was March 31st?
Yes, it's Sunday.
And you were there to do a walkthrough of the home.
Yes,
You were there, and Joseph was there with you,
yes.
and Maureen was there with you too.
Maureen, Billy, and the
Billy was
children.
there too. And what was Bill's demeanor like on that day?
I spent most of the time with the children, but when I was in the kitchen doing something, playing a game with them, they were at a kitchen window looking at some kind of part of the window that they needed to repair, and he was right there with them. He stayed with them through the whole walkthrough, hovering, I guess. But, other than that, the demeanor was fine.
Okay. So he was helping with the walkthrough?
I don't know helping because I really didn't do the walkthrough at all. And I don't know how, they were just pointing out things, as far as I know, that needed to be done and could be done.
Okay. You mentioned Bill FaceTiming with you and your husband,
Yes,
and Bill had never FaceTimed with the two of you before.
no.
Had you ever FaceTimed before?
Have I FaceTimed anyone at all?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever just FaceTime your grandkids?
Occasionally, it was difficult actually because of their schedules, but we did, yes.
Yes. In the spring of 2019, when Maureen was planning to leave, you said she was going to be moving into Brenda's home. That's right?
Yes.
She was saving up money for a place of her own?
She would have been, that's what she wanted to move in there. That was one of the reasons why that was going to be a good fit for her, she said.
Okay.
She would be able to save some money.
Gotcha. And at that time, Maureen had not hired an attorney to help with the divorce?
They had both contacted attorneys, as far as I know. I don't know what the rules are in New Hampshire. She talked somewhat about mediation, and I don't know how far along things were.
Okay. Sounds like she consulted with someone?
I think
got
they
some-
both did, yes, but I don't know the details of either of that.
She wasn't being actively represented by someone?
No.
Did you ever worry about Maureen's physical safety while she was married to Bill?
Occasionally I did.
Did Maureen seem as though she shared those worries?
No, she did not.
I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Gaudet, you can step down, and
Thank you.
as you know, you can stay or leave as you choose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all the witnesses that we have for today.
Fine, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that's it for today. I'll see you back here at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Please remember my instructions to you, which obviously include not speaking with anybody about this case or doing any research or allowing any information to come from any outside source other than in the courtroom. Please let me know if anything comes up, and remember to keep an open mind. Thank you.
All right.
So, counsel, I think Attorney Hinckley gave me a nod, but I also wanted to chat with you, so I'm not sure what you wanted to bring up, Attorney Hinckley.
There are two matters, Judge. First, I know that we finished a little early yesterday, and today you haven't raised concerns yet that we might, but we are ahead of schedule, and we're thinking that we might finish the state's case Friday morning.
Okay.
So we are on schedule, even though we finished early the past couple of days.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Continue tomorrow.
Okay,
The other reason, we had the conversation before about.
you can all have a seat other than Attorney Hinckley, who's talking to me, and so feel free to
about
sit.
the live feed video, and at the time, I said the state had no position. I obviously did not fully think through that. That's why we have victim witness advocates who reminded me that we have a couple of witnesses who do raise concerns for us. We have a crime scene who's going to be showing photographs, graphic photographs, as well as a medical examiner who will also be showing graphic photographs. And we have a concern about those photographs, those images being live live feed through the internet.
Okay, thank you. Anything from the defense on that issue?
I understand the state's concern to take that position.
Okay. Let me reflect on it for the evening. Are you presenting any of that information tomorrow?
So the crime scene will probably be later tomorrow morning. We haven't finalized our witness list for
I had wanted to chat with you about jury instructions. I know I provided you a draft. They were not inclusive of everything that I had intended to include in there. As an example, I didn't have any instruction on flight. But I would welcome any input from counsel because we're talking potentially Friday for closing an argument. I'm going to need something before Friday. So I guess today being Tuesday, I'm going to ask that if counsel has any recommendations, that they provide them to me no later than, Wednesday at noon. If there's going to be an argument about it, I really would need them earlier. So I don't know if you all have chatted at all or what your position is on that timeline.
Thank you, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to review the instructions. I appreciate it if we have until Wednesday afternoon.
What do you mean afternoon, noon or afternoon?
Afternoon, like at the end of the day, like right now, tomorrow.
Okay. Attorney Hinckley?
So Judge, I did review them briefly last night. I had no issues to raise. We're not submitting any flight instructions. I like to argue that issue and not have instructions on it. So we're not submitting any instructions on it. And we may have a requested charge depending on if Mr. Argie in fact does testify. I know that we had that conversation 2 days ago, but ultimately it is his decision. So we may request an instruction depending on if he does testify.
Sure.
So I can't give you that instruction now. It would be an interested witness type of instruction, which we have standard instructions.
Okay. So you're telling me now that you're not going to ask for a flight instruction, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's fine with me. I mean, if I gave it at this point, I would give the standard instruction. But if it's not being requested by the state, I'm not inclined to put it in there. So, okay. So it would be helpful if, the sooner we can wrap that up, the better. So far, the state doesn't have any comments one way or the other in terms of what I've submitted. So if you guys can get information to me sooner than the end of the day, Wednesday, that's great. But
Thank you, Your Honor.
okay. And we'll see each other at 9 tomorrow. My calendar had some things on it, but they've gone away. So I'll be ready to go at 9. And I will provide a ruling as it relates to the concerns raised by the state before we start. Thank you.
All right.
You could give that back to the state. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.